The Montgomery County School Board has forced my family and many other families into a difficult and unjust situation. By mandating these books, the board has taken away our right to opt our children out of content that directly contradicts our religious beliefs.
I thought some of the most encouraging questioning was just asking about the content of the books and really pressing opposing counsel on how those books can be appropriate for kids in elementary school.
The plaintiffs in a major parental rights case sounding optimistic after their day at the Supreme Court. They are fighting for the right to opt their kids out of assigned school reading on gender and sexuality. Kerri Urbahn is with us now. Kerri, this is what I thought was interesting. For the most part, I imagine that the Supreme Court justices were like, why are we even having to pay attention to this? Because these books are crazy. Here's Elena Kagan, one of the justices, yesterday.
I, too, was struck by these are, young kids, picture books, and on matters concerning sexuality. I suspect there are a lot of non-religious parents who weren't all that thrilled about this. And then you add in religion, and that's, even more serious.
Now, Justice Jackson, she did have a different point of view, but overall, it seemed to me that parents are going to win this case. How did you see it?
Yeah, look, I think this was a very foolish fight for this Maryland school district to pick, especially when you consider Maryland was a pioneer in religious freedom. And I think Justice Kavanaugh made that point during oral arguments yesterday. So it's, equally, I think, or I should say doubly offensive. I think the parents had a great day in court. And, I've heard some arguments on the left saying things like, well, they're all, why can't they? What's the problem? And, in terms of the opt-out. But you have to remember, issues regarding gender and marriage are fundamental to the three big faiths in the world, to Judaism, to Islam, to Christianity. These aren't just feelings. These aren't just things that emerged in the last few years, like issues on marriage and gender. But this has been around since the beginning of time and has transcended culture, race, and the like. And if you remember, Dana, I used to work in the religious freedom space, so I used to deal with this kind of stuff all the time. And I was always so surprised by the activists who are pushing these kinds of books and ideology on children, because they would always be the ones, screaming tolerance, but they were the ones who were intolerant. They were the ones who were pushing these beliefs. And for these parents just simply wanting to opt out is such a reasonable request, which it seemed obvious that the Supreme Court agreed mostly. Yeah. Most of them agreed with that yesterday.
As Jesse Waters said on The Five last night, wow, these parents were the first to unite Muslims, Christians, and Jews on one topic. Wanted to talk about this. The judge in the Abrego Garcia case, he's the one in El Salvador, rejected the Justice Department's opposition to discovery request. This is a quote from the judge. She says defendants have known, at least since last week, that this court requires specific legal and factual showings to support any claim of privilege, that they have continued to rely on boilerplate assertion, and that ends now. Just because most people in this country did not go to law school, what does it mean to have this denied?
Look, two things could be true at once. You can have someone who is illegally here, who was part of MS-13, and objectively looking at it, just should not be here. But another thing can be true at the same time, which is that the government made a mistake in removing this person. And that's what I think is at play here. And frankly, Dana, I don't understand why DOJ is burning so much capital, legally speaking, on something they can easily fix. All they have to do is go back to the immigration judge, ask that judge to reopen the file, say that the law has changed, that MS-13 has now been designated as a foreign terrorist organization, and because of that, that withholding of removal order, that order that is still on the books, despite, everyone dancing around that and basically acting like it doesn't exist, that doesn't apply to FDOs. So he can be sent to El Salvador. That's all that needs to happen for this to be fixed. And, I see the Trump administration officials coming on talking about the problem. They're right about the problem. And it was greatly exacerbated by the last administration. There's no question about that. But that order still exists. It needs to be disposed of in the proper course. And it's something that DOJ can easily do. They should do it because they're going to need the Supreme Court on a lot of other things. And I think they're taking a big gamble on this.
Every morning I wake up thinking that I'm going to read the headline that it's all been fixed. That hasn't happened yet. Thank you so much, Kerri.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.